Hey, I'm not I'm not I, I'm not here to judge. I'm not here to judge. I'm here for when you come back, you know?
Yeah, I got you. Well, you know what, Tyler? I'll always be here for you too.
It's good to
You
put
know.
your body Yeah, well, I appreciate that. Welcome in. David Eickholt joins the show once again. I I didn't know, David, you had this much pull. I guess I underestimated you. That's why we bring you on the show. Last episode with you clocked over, it's in the 5 digits of downloads between YouTube and
Oh, really?
it went crazy. And I don't know if it's because I used a little bit of a clickbaity title that I said I would use in the thing, like Iowa could get 2 5-star recruits. We're talking about women's basketball. We'll talk a little bit more about women's basketball to open this show. Um, it went nuts on our YouTube channel. So I guess the people just love David Eickholt.
Let's not go that far.
I think I don't know. I don't know. I think it's true.
I think the Discord might give you a more realistic perspective on how many people like me or not.
People like you there too. I think anybody. I think you got to take it with You got to understand that there's going to be a couple that don't.
Oh yeah,
and
absolutely.
they're probably the most vocal. And then that there's a reason that a lot of people do listen, read your stuff, consume your content. It is what it is. So,
you know what? That's life, though, isn't it?
I think so.
Like across everything, it is what it is. We move forward. We push.
And we keep going. Yeah, and we bring you back on for more. And so if they're going to see your name attached to the episode, if they don't want to listen, they won't listen. They won't be here. Everyone who is listening is here because they enjoy your stuff. Got a comment on on that last YouTube video that said, "Need more David and Tyler episodes." So I'm gonna roll with that.
Look at that.
I know.
Put that one in a frame. Put that one in a picture and frame it.
I'll put it up on
the only time we get it, but
we'll put it back here for the next episode.
That'll be the backdrop.
Yeah, well, I'll get a background with that plastered, just repeat it over and over. So like I said, want to talk a little bit of women's basketball. Probably more exciting conversation, one that would be tuned into more than the men's conversation right now. Although exciting win the other day against Nebraska, just handled the Huskers on senior day in Lincoln. So
they got to be so tired of playing Iowa in like meaningful game, like whether it be to get in the Big Ten tournament, whether it to become bowl eligible, like they got to be so sick of Iowa.
It's it's tough to be a Husker if
unbelievable. Like it really is unbelievable. Like the way Iowa has beaten them in just whether it be football or basketball. And Iowa basketball typically has struggled at Pinnacle Bank Arena. Like that's actually a really nice arena. They show out.
Oh yeah,
it's a tough place to play. But despite all the injuries and stuff, you got to tip your cap off to Peyton Sanford, Fran McCaffrey, and Price Sanford. The Hawkeyes boys holding it down.
Yeah, just lighting it up. It's funny watching them shoot. They just have the same form. Like it's like that's just a Sanford. I don't know which one it is, but it's one of them. I told my wife because she is a Nebraska fan. Her family's all from Nebraska. I was like, Nebraska favored by like 7 points going into this thing. Senior day, Nebraska's fighting to get into the Big Ten tournament, where if they win a game or two, they might be in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah,
and all things point to Iowa winning by 10 points, and then they end up winning by like 14 or 15, whatever. So yeah, weird game.
It's so crazy, like how weak the bubble is in college basketball. Like we're talking about a team that was 1 win away from getting in the NCAA tournament. They didn't even qualify for the conference tournament. Like that's, and again, if you look at their resume, they probably should be on the bubble because again, the bubble's so bad. But like it still blows my mind to like think about it. But at the same time, like Nebraska just choked down the stretch of the season.
Yeah.
I mean, they were comfortably in like a month ago, and then they just couldn't get anything done.
Yeah, and the result is that Iowa gets to keep playing because Iowa is not going to be in the NCAA tournament unless they go on the run of a century and beat. I think it would have to be like Ohio State, Illinois, Maryland, Michigan State would probably be like the likely run that they'd have to go on. Who knows, right? Who knows? But their season continues. A couple guys get a few more games or one more game. More exciting is the women. The women had their tournament last weekend.
Yep.
Played well. Came up short again against Ohio State. 2 games now. I think the one in in Columbus went to overtime. did it?
Yeah, Lucy Olson hit like 4 3-pointers over the last 90 seconds to send him into overtime.
And then this one, they battled back and forth, and a questionable
Iowa was
call.
the better team most of the day. And like, I mean, again, I got a lot of heat from people because I thought the officiating was atrocious in that sequence. And I get people don't like it when you focus too much on officiating. But ultimately, like, if people focus on it, it's going to be part of the story, just no matter what. Like, you can't tell a story of that game without bringing it up.
Yeah.
And it was more so about like they didn't call, they called Hannah Stolke for a foul on the other end. That's fine. I'm cool with it. I probably would have let it go. But then Sydney Folter gets hacked across the body on the other possession. You're not going to send her to the line. But
Yeah.
Iowa did get a good shot at the buzzer. They had a shot to win it.
Yeah.
And they've had 4 different times to do that this season, and they haven't been able to do it. Like, if there's one big criticism about this women's team, they're 0-5 in games decided by 3 points or less. Like, they just have not gotten over that hump. But again, they have no bad losses. And if I am a 3 seed, I am terrified of hosting a 6 seed Iowa.
Oh yeah.
I am terrified of it.
Yeah, and we'll get there in a second, but yeah, that's a tough 6 seed to run across.
I don't think you'd want to play UCLA that next day anyway. Like, I don't think Iowa would have gotten smoked as bad as Ohio State did, but UCLA was different that day.
That was embarrassing. I mean, that was, and all of Iowa was loving it because of the Cody McMahon stuff, all that stuff.
I will say one maybe a little bit petty fact. I won't get into the disrespectful comment, but Ava Heiden did outscore Cody McMahon in the Big Ten tournament.
Let's talk about Ava Heiden. Sheesh.
Stud.
Dude.
Like,
that's the kind of ascent.
Yeah.
So this is the kind of like little run, right? Because the whole story was she got like 12 minutes in the entire month of February, right? And I think it's where Iowa lacks still. We run this. Hannah's our big, but she plays more like a 3 or a 4. Like she could play those positions if you really like told her, hey, this is your lane. But we've had to use her as like a 5, and she has to guard the bigs, and she's strong and she can. But like then you look at like a real 5, like Betts from UCLA or some of these other girls that you see across the country, and you're like, okay, that's not Hannah's lane. That's a different role there. And we just don't have that. O'Grady is awesome. I'm like, she might be my favorite player on the team. Every time, my wife can attest, every time she comes in the game and takes a little bunny and like just is so, she's just like, hey, I'm just here playing basketball. It's money. And every time I'm like, let her eat. And she's had her moments too. Heiden, she offers some different stuff, and she's young. And this is the kind of like ascension in 1 year, David, that I think you look back in like 2 or 3 years and you're like, remember when she flashed in that Big Ten tournament? That was the early sign that we had something here. And at least I hope that's what it is.
So here's where I'd go. And there's a lot of things, going into next year that need to change or things that need to improve. So this is not me solely picking on Hannah Stolke, because I think Hannah Stolke is great. She's an all Big Ten caliber player, right? I expect her to be first team all conference. She's got to shoot the basketball. She has to develop a jump shot next year, because again, I think one of the more underrated moves of the season was moving Hannah back to the 5, because she's just so much more comfortable there. She can bully people. She's probably pound for pound one of the strongest players in the conference, if not the country. I mean, she is incredibly fast, very skilled, and she bullies people that are 3-4 inches taller than her in the post. So I think that's really impressive. But you have to play her at the 4, and then you throw Ava Heiden at the 5. This might be a really hot take to some people, but I think
let's go
about it. Ava Heiden could be the most skilled post player that Iowa has had, at least in the past 20 years. And that includes Megan Gustafson and Monica Sonano.
Wow.
And here's why. It's not about the fact I expect her stats to be in that category, because look, Monica Sonano, I think, gets really underappreciated. Not by Iowa fans, but like from a Big Ten conference perspective. She's a 4-time all-conference post. Money. The little jumper, did not dribble the ball ever, and she still worked people in the post, right?
She's got one of the most, I'm going to cut you off just for a second. She has one of the most, you look at her dribble stats, which aren't a thing, but they are a thing for her. And like she had I
I
think
know
she
what you're
had
gonna
more
say.
she had more points than dribbles or more
Yes.
attempts than like something nuts. Like she never
Jan
dribbled the
hates her
basketball.
post dribbling. Jan hates her post dribbling.
Well,
Like that's a
y-
big thing that she really focuses on.
in theory, if you do your work beforehand, right? Like if you
That's
do
all
your
she
work
says.
to get position,
Yep.
you're there. You just use your 2 steps and you've got it, right? So, I mean, I would say the better you are at doing that, the better you are at clearly setting yourself up. And I don't think anyone maybe in the history of basketball did it better than Monica Sonano. I mean, she was
He was
absurd.
terrific. And I want to pay a lot of respect to Megan Gustafson because I think Megan Gustafson also broke the glass ceiling for Big Ten women's players. She was the first Big Ten
Oh,
player to
for
ever be
sure.
named National Player of the Year. Like she was a monster. And I give her the ultimate respect because if you watch her in the WNBA now, Tyler, she's hitting threes. Like she's a marksman coming off the bench or in that starting role. She never shot threes at Iowa. Like
No.
she's transformed her game to have a landing spot in the WNBA. So that is like they're two different players, but it's very much like Luka Garza to me too, because Luka Garza lost a ton of weight, has continued to add that 3-point shot, and he can do different things, right? But now they're
Yeah.
staying in the league because they transformed their game. But Ava Heiden, it's more of a praise on her. I cannot remember Iowa having a 6'4" post that can run like that. I mean, Monica Sonano could run. Megan Gustafson, Iowa played a different style of ball because it wasn't Caitlin Clark there at the time.
Yeah, right.
Ava Heiden going up and down the court, it's among the best in the country at that size. I mean, I am blown away by her. She can finish with either hand. She needs to learn how to not foul, and that's going to be work in progress. Watch
Yeah.
her work Cody McMahon in the post because she won the fight before she even got the ball. That's how she got a few of those points against Ohio State. Now she needs to continue to improve the jump shot. She needs to cut down turnovers. She needs to kind of get that dominant edge to her game. But if you look from a skill set perspective and athletically, she is different than any post I can remember Iowa having over the past 20 years.
I said the same thing, not emphatically, over the past 2 decades, but to my wife, I looked at her and I said, most impressive thing about her is you just don't see a lot of 18-year-olds that are
Yep.
6'4", as a woman or even a guy. Like I can think
Yep.
about so many guys I played with around that transition from high school to college that still weren't caught up with their bodies yet. They're in
Yep.
the middle of
Yep.
growing and still at the end of puberty. Like they're large developmental physical area of your life, and it's awkward. Even some of the Division I talents, it's awkward because you're
Yes.
catching up and you're getting there. You're getting a Division I strength and conditioning program that goes along with that, and that makes things weird. You get all this, you add muscle mass, you get stronger. And she caught a pass over her head. I don't remember who passed it, and then finished real quick, footwork, bang, off the glass, layup. And I was like, damn, you do not
Yeah.
see a bunch of posts, like just like you said, you do not see a bunch of posts running the floor like that and being able to finish soft. Seems really unbothered by like the moment and like all those things you said, working on defense, fouling, jump shot, all the little stuff, things that happen from year 1 to year 2 when you get to you get to see the full year of college speed and what it looks like, and then you get the offseason to work on it. Man, she's exciting.
And she was
She's
swatting shots, man. Like, I mean, her defense, she's got like big broad shoulders too. So like she's not getting beat up like as much as
yeah.
again, I'm only relating it to the past Iowa post. Like they weren't outstanding defenders, but they could rebound the basketball when they needed to. And Iowa played
Mhm.
at such a fast tempo, and you have a point guard that's launching 30 footers and making them like 45% of the time. You get a
Yeah.
little bit of leeway there. And I think that's the
Yeah.
most encouraging thing to me about next year and in the future. Like, again, this is no dig at the past Iowa teams at all because they were unbelievable. There's a reason why they're going to be remembered forever, transcend the
Yeah.
sport. Dude, Iowa's defense and the improvement they've made from last year to this year is flat out incredible. They're not some
Mhm.
elite stopping team, but they go through spurts where you're like, man, like they're really playing hard-nosed defense. They're not giving up open shots. Kylie Fierbach got screwed by all Big Ten. The fact that she was not in the
Yeah.
defensive team was an absolute joke. I do think
Yeah.
she can get beat up a little bit in zone at times. But if you have man-to-man, if you're playing man-to-man defense, there are very few players I'm taking on the perimeter over Kylie Fierbach, especially when you go up against elite shooters.
Yeah. Reminiscent of Gabby Marshall from the past couple seasons. Like, she
Yeah.
kind of took that role. I don't know if she's as just absolutely relentless, like cardio wise, as Gabby was, because I think Gabby might have been untouched. Like, she could just go and run
Yeah.
and sprint for an entire game, but she is really impressive. She did get screwed on that. Um, just an incredible year. And just the fact that down the stretch here, Jan has played the freshmen so much, really the whole year. But there are spurts where it's like there are 4 freshmen on the floor. And it's
Dude, they sold like Kelly Levine on the floor in the third quarter against
yeah,
Wisconsin. There was an all freshman lineup, and I'm like, holy shit! Like,
like, who
I did
does
not
that?
see this coming.
Like,
No.
who could actually put 5 on the floor in a and it's not like we're giving the game away. It's like we're expecting you guys to still go run and score and play. Like, it's just the depth is incredible with the freshman class. And like, I think it might be underrated when you have 5 that all played significant minutes, 4 or 5 that all played the amount of jump that each one of them makes, and then the sum of those parts when you have 5 kids that all make a jump in an off season, like, those 5 could be insane next year.
I'm telling you, and plus you had Addie Deal, then you had another 6'4" post from Alaska and Layla Hayes. Then you have Journey Houston from Davenport, who was a 5-star at one point before her knee injury, but she's still a really good player to me. I mean, like I said, the future's bright. They're not going away. And I'm going to say one name. I've said it repeatedly on Twitter. She has not played that significant of a role over the past 5-6 weeks, but I am all in on her because I've watched her shoot in warmups. I've watched her go through good spurts. Tegan Mulaney. I'm still in on Tegan Mulaney. I think she's going to be a really, really damn good player over the course of her career. I think she'll be at least all conference one time, and I don't know how quick she'll be able to make that big kind of next step in terms of consistency. But, dude, I watched her go up in against Ohio State, not this matchup, but the first matchup. She played 8 minutes. She didn't score, but she had 8 rebounds. Like,
Yeah.
she's a relentless rebounder, and she can run the floor.
Yeah, I think, and maybe Deal is that person. I think if you get the scorer, you get, because every team needs one. Every team needs a go-to. You gotta have your guy or your gal who, like, hey, we need points. We haven't had to worry about that because Caitlin's been there for 4 years, but this year it was Lucy and or at times Sydney. And we're gonna need one of those next year. If you get that go-to scorer, like your leading scorer, someone emerges, right? Whoever it is.
Yeah.
I think all the other pieces are there. Like,
I think Iowa's going to go shopping in the portal, too.
oh yeah, and yeah, we haven't even discussed that. Like, that's always an option. And Iowa
Yeah.
is going to continue to be a hot portal spot for any potential transfer.
The biggest issue I had with this year's team, obviously the one possession games are troubling, and it's not something that they could have solved in season, I think. But now it's just about developing and moving forward in recruiting. Like, there were times this year, Tyler, where like everybody fits in a role, but like Lucy Olson and Aaliyah Guyton had spurts of it, were the only real true shot creators.
Yeah.
Like, Sita Falter could go get you a bucket when you need it. Kate Martin got a lot better at that as she kind of grew up in her career.
Yeah.
But Iowa needs 2 to 3 players that say, hey, you know what, go get a bucket. Like, Lucy had to be that one. That's why I think you see her shot numbers at times were almost overinflated, and she wasn't hitting. The offense kind of became a standstill. But what I try to tell people is, like, look at the action on the floor. At some point, she has to say, you know what, I don't care. I need to go out and get the bucket because right now our set plays aren't working. They're shutting down our motion, but something has to happen. Yeah. So I think if you can get another true shot creator, you can develop Aaliyah Guyton. Addie Deal, I think, can come in and create her own shot because I've watched her highlights against top 10 teams in high school basketball with multiple Power 5 players on that team. She can go do that. But that's going to be kind of that next step. And that's something that, we put on our 3 things why Iowa can make a run, 3 reasons why they won't. That's one of our worries is, does Iowa have the shot creators in elite matchups to advance in March?
Yeah. And the fun part is that Jan knows that. Like, we have a great coach. And I think there was a stretch of, like, I don't know, 6 losses or something where people were like really like, "Oh, what's going on?" And now that you look back at the entire body of work, you're like, the season kind of makes sense. Like, there was gonna be a spot where things just weren't clicking. There was growing pains.
Yeah.
people weren't filling their roles correctly, or they weren't, whatever it may be. And there was going to be adversity, and it was all about the response. The response has been incredible. And I think I saw you tweet it that Jan surpassed Lisa for the best first year record.
Second most. Yep.
Second most. Okay.
But no, I mean, still, I mean, I remember you and I sitting up here 2 months ago when they were in the middle of that losing streak, Tyler. And, because you were asking me about the criticism about Jan Jensen. I was laughing because I said, you guys just need to wait. Like, it's going to come together. And it clearly has. Like, Jan's coaching job has been pretty damn great this year because I always said I thought Iowa had an outside shot at hosting. But if you had told Jan before the season, they're a lock for the NCAA tournament. They won 22 games. They beat USC at home on the most star-riddled recruit weekend ever. Like, there have been so many moments. Oh, and by the way, there's no bad losses. They're not taking moral victories. Like, they've been really pissed off at some of these post losses. Like, Jan's not satisfied, but I think you look at the way they've adjusted their game, their offense, with an emphasis on defense, different defensive strategies against star players. Like, Iowa's not going out there and playing its own game, Tyler. Like, the scouting reports and what they've focused on have been really, really intricate. And it's very easy for me to sit here and say you can make a case for Jan Jensen to be Big Ten Coach of the Year, but I really, really think you could. I don't care they were an 11 seed because look at what they lost and everything that's kind of culminated into it. Now, look, USC's coach is going to get it, or maybe Corey Close from UCLA. Not mad at it. That's great. But, like, Jan Jensen has done one of the best coaching jobs in the Big Ten this year because I don't think there's a lot of coaches that could go in there with all the expectations, with all the pressure, with losing the greatest player that's ever played college basketball in Caitlin Clark and lead Iowa to a 9th straight 20-plus win season. She's been great.
It's been amazing, and it's exciting for the future. I think you got this class of 25 coming in, three exciting recruits. 26 class just has a lot of hope. There's nothing steady yet, but there's the girls they're going after in that class are they're all top 10. Like, they are not messing around with who they're trying to bring in there. And we talked about it. It was the title of the last show. Like, they have some legitimate shots at getting a couple of those.
That hasn't changed, by the way.
The portal as well. I have to imagine that game against USC in Iowa City didn't hurt. God, what a day that was.
Well, I'll tell you this too, and this is something where if they do go after a shot creator or a point guard in the portal, like if I'm Jan Jensen and the staff, I bring in whoever's going to enter the portal, we don't know yet, and be like, look who took over for Caitlin Clark. Oh, by the way, she was a unanimous first-team all-conference. Oh, I won't be surprised if she's an honorable mention All-American. They're just going to say, look, it doesn't drop off.
Yeah.
We have a breed of excellence at point guard at Iowa. Because, again, even before Caitlin Clark, like, we're not going to forget about Kathleen Doyle.
Oh, yeah.
We're not going to forget about Samantha Logic. Like, they have a history of outstanding point guard play that spans back 15, 20 years, at least at the top of my head. So,
and
that'll be something to watch.
And Jan's specialty is the post. And so it's like, we've got both,
they got motion. I think that's what the kids are saying now.
Yeah, we got motion. I am 30 and should not say that. That sounded horrible. Everybody forget that. Delete it. Incredible. So going to be fun. As we look ahead for them, it's looking like a 6 seed. There's one person in the entire world that does bracketology for women, and it's Charlie Cream. And 6 seed for them with a potential dream draw is what I'm hearing, to go and potentially face Duke in the second round, which I don't know what that matchup looks like. Yeah, I don't, but it's certainly better than playing UCLA, USC, like one of those teams again, if you would have been on the 7 line or the 8 line.
Yeah, that was the key. They had to avoid playing a 1 or 2 seed in the round of 32. But again, if I was a 1 or 2 seed, I'd be pretty damn scared too.
Still would not
Iowa.
Yeah. I mean, with how they've played Ohio State twice, they beat USC, they damn near beat UCLA. Like, they've proven that they can go play with those teams, and they ain't scared at all.
I got a hot take. Again, I think this is going to happen, and it's going to absolutely annoy the hell out of me when it happens, but I understand why it's going to. You know who else is on that 3 seed line, Tyler?
Let me think. I should. 3 seeds are, is it LSU? Yeah.
I think they're going to throw Iowa in LSU's region.
And from what I heard is they're more of a 2 seed, or should be, but like they would be the best 3 seed on there. That would hurt.
Flau'jae Johnson didn't play the last like 10 days of the season.
Oh, and okay. And so they've dropped off a little bit, and that's why they're going to be a 3. And man, that
yeah,
I feel like that's,
I just don't want it. I understand why they do, because the ratings that's going to draw is going to be crazy. But it's not. Let me put it this way: if it was healthy toxicity and competitiveness, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
And I actually think there's a lot of respect in some degrees between LSU's players and the coaching staff and Iowa's. I think it's the fan bases. I think it's like it's just been very polarizing. And again, it'll be fun from a basketball perspective. Like when Iowa rematched them in the Elite Eight, I loved it from a basketball perspective. But it was kind of a tricky.
I think it was
for a lot of people too.
Yeah, I think it was great, but that was also because Caitlin and Angel were still there. I don't know.
Correct.
The storyline's played out now, and I don't know if it actually would draw massive ratings, like people might
That's
think
fair.
it would. It would do well. Maybe it would. I don't know. I hope that they get that Duke region and maybe have a chance against Duke. And if they, you win 2 games and you're in the Sweet 16, and that is a success for most any team, basically, unless you're like, one of those top 4 teams every year. I remember you came on here way early on, maybe not last. It could have been that last podcast we did a couple months ago, and I said, "What do you think? Like ceiling Sweet 16?" You're like, "If they make it to the Sweet 16, that is awesome. That is huge. That is a 100% success." And
yes.
And I think now with how they played, all the development they've had, the fun that we've had, the win against USC, I don't think they have to make the Sweet 16 for this season to be an overwhelming success. I think if they play hard and play a great game against Duke and make it competitive, that's still exactly what you want to see. You're right there on the cusp, knowing that you're going to take a step forward next year, hopefully.
I mean, I think at this point they have to make the round of 32, because I think you want to see how Jan responds.
Oh, for sure.
That number 1 chair.
Yeah.
Because again, you don't want to take anybody for granted, especially since it's all matchup based. But again, it goes back to this, and that was my preseason ceiling for Iowa. Is I thought they had an outside shot hosting and they'd make a Sweet 16, or they had a chance to. They aren't hosting, but they were probably 1 or 2 bounces away from being able to potentially host, because again, they've had 4 game-winning shot opportunities. It hasn't happened. But again, if you lose that class that had 2 national championship appearances, and you follow that up with a Sweet 16 appearance, that tells you their staying power within the program. Now, we all know that, but I'm talking about from the national landscape of everything else. And that's why getting Addie Deal on campus is going to be amazing from this standpoint. It was a huge win to get Caitlin Clark to stay in state at Iowa. But the amount of notoriety and the prestige you have to have as a program to pull a 5-star out of California who's on a top 5 rated high school team in the country. I don't care that her cousin plays for Grinnell. There's a little bit of Iowa ties, but that girl could have gone anywhere in the country.
Yeah.
And she stayed even through a head coaching change. There's levels to that game.
I was going to say, to keep a 5-star home, tough. To bring a 5-star to Iowa, fucking tough, dude. That's
not a national powerhouse either. Historic powerhouse. I mean,
right. We're on the cusp. And I think it is a fun. I think for basketball recruits that are women basketball recruits right now, Iowa is really exciting. At least it would feel that way, because you have, and I imagine that Jan and the staff are selling them on this, Raina and all of them. They're like, hey, just take a look at what we've done. Just look at the last 5 years. Go back 8 years to Gustafson. You are part of a revolution of a program where we are establishing ourselves as one of the elites. You can be part of that. You can be a major part of that. And that's fun as a kid to be like, wow, I could go in and be a major contributor to a program that is establishing themselves among the best in the country. It's flashy. The Caitlin Clark effect is gonna linger for years to come. I can go play where Caitlin played. The brand, the Iowa, that brand is just sexy right now. It's crazy to say, because the
Fever having a preseason game in Carver Hawkeye Arena.
I know, it's nuts, and it sold out in 40 minutes. Like, we're gonna get to football here in a second, but like, sexy, never a word that's used with Iowa football. Consistent, sure.
I mean, Iowa athletics as a whole, honestly.
Right, but the
Because
women's
look,
basketball.
I'm not going to describe wrestling as sexy. Like that just doesn't feel right.
I'll call those guys sexy. Ben
I,
Keter's sexy. Um, it's just like as a recruit, there's a little bit of that like novelty stimulus that you want.
yes.
You're like,
Yep.
where can I go be? What decision can I make as a recruit to go be different? Like,
The real interesting thing that I'm still kind of learning as I get more involved with like women's basketball is the difference between what high school like men look for and what high school girls look for. Because I still think there are certain things that they might prioritize over something else. But the other part is for women's basketball, now we're seeing it soar in popularity. So like the dynamics of what they might be looking for, I think are going to drastically change here over the next 5 or 10 years. And I think Iowa could be at the forefront of it. I can say without doubt, Iowa has one of the best NIL polls for women's basketball in the country.
Hell yeah.
And I'll tell you what, man, that can pay off with some of these big time prospects.
Yeah. Hey, McKenna Willixo. What are the other ones? I just looked.
Kate Harpring.
Kate Harpring, Finley Chastain. Hey.
You're still after Jenica Lewis, state champion, I think, or state champion, I believe. Johnson, 5-star.
Jersey Robinson or something like that was one of them I just saw as well.
Dude, they're to the point now where like women's basketball is so crazy to me too, because I don't know if you realize this, Tyler. Like you think football gets recruited early, women's basketball starts in like 7th grade.
Oh
like
yeah, no, I'm
on the map early. Like Jersey, I believe is a 2027 right now.
Yeah.
2028 even. Like it's insane how early like it becomes known who's actually going to be it and who's not.
Yeah, some people might not be aware of that, but it just kind of follows the development, right? Because girls develop a couple years, on average, a couple years. So you can kind of see what they're going to turn into, or they start to get really, really skilled or really good just a year or two earlier. I am familiar with that just because I'm a big volleyball fan.
The physical side,
Well, and my wife has been in club volleyball coaching and stuff for a while, and like I know how early the coaches. I think I follow Nebraska volleyball a lot, and they're offering those girls and getting them to commit in like 9th grade. Like that's
insane.
Like you basically know where you're going to college for the entirety of your high school career if you're one of the best. Like it's just nuts.
It's also really cool. I meant to bring this up when it comes to Jenica Lewis. ESPN ranks the top 25 high school teams in the country. Johnson, Iowa, 14th.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. They are really good. They've got studs all over the place. So,
but I think that's really cool. Like Iowa and the Midwest as a whole, I don't think people realize how good women's basketball is from the high school ranks. Like most of the elite recruits, like that's why all Iowa Tech has won multiple national titles in the AAU.
Yeah, they're insane.
Like they're elite, and that's why you have Taylor McCabe from Fremont, Nebraska, playing for all Iowa Tech when she was in the AAU too.
And Sydney Fulter. I just saw that picture get tweeted out.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that could be an underrated thing that a lot of people won't notice or see, but the development of call it the farm system, the AAU system, the high school talent in the state of Iowa because of Caitlin Clark and the success that the Hawkeyes have had, and Iowa State, to be frank, like they've been good as well. Like, oh, by the way, shout out Dinnebeer at Drake. What a dog.
Dog.
What a dog.
Like, I have respect for anybody that puts her on first team All-American or second because she 100% should. Like, I watched her, like, torch Iowa, really keep Drake in that game. She torched Iowa State, and now she's dropping, like, 30 a night. I'll tell you this, too. Iowa recruited the hell out of her. If Caitlin Clark didn't go to Iowa, I think Katie Dinnebeer would have been a Hawkeye. And I'll tell you what, Caitlin's Caitlin. Katie probably would have worked out pretty well, too.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying is, like, the development of the high school game in Iowa, like, Iowa might be, you talk about like Cali, Florida, and Texas. Those are the football spots, right? Iowa might be a women's basketball spot.
For
like
population versus product too. Absolutely.
For sure. Yeah. So a lot of fun women's basketball talk. I enjoy this. Obviously, we went for 35 minutes. We won't do nearly as much for football because we're out of season here. But before we get there, all those watching the YouTube can see it down on the bottom of the overlay there. Iowa Egg Council sponsoring the show this month. Shout out to them. Had my 5 eggs this morning. Never miss them. I know David just does liquid breakfast, so he probably isn't having a lot of eggs, but I don't know.
I had a
Maybe
breakfast
they're
sandwich this morning.
a little breakfast sandwich with some egg on it.
Breakfast sandwich this morning, yeah, and then my 2 shots of espresso and a large coffee.
There you go. If we could get the Espresso Council to sponsor us, that'd be great too. I would
I'll
take
never
that.
sleep again.
We'll be doing some stuff with the Iowa Egg Council later this fall. 6 grams of protein per egg, great fat for you, great brain health. It's expensive, sure, but we talked about this last time, right? The whole eggs being expensive thing. How much? Like David, if you go buy a breakfast sandwich at the
well, I did make my own breakfast sandwich this
okay,
morning.
so that's financially responsible. But if you're gonna go and buy like I don't know, like an egg McMuffin or like some breakfast sandwich from a gas station, it's gonna be $2-3, right?
At
Eggs
least,
are
I'd say probably about 4.
maybe 4, right? 5
Yeah.
if you're getting fancy with it. If eggs are 50 cents, which is like the highest they've ever been, they'll eventually resort to the norm. You have 5 scrambled eggs or 5 over easy eggs, which most people are like, my God, I cannot eat 5 eggs. That's like $2.50. So
do you mix in cheese or anything, or do you just go onion, spinach, or anything?
dude, I'm going straight eggs, salt. That's it. Cook them in butter. Just 5
Okay.
scrambled eggs and butter. I would, if I had time or like cared about the getting a little fancy, I would definitely throw. You know, if someone else is making me the omelet or like the scramble, I'll definitely throw in a little onion, a little cheese. But no, every morning.
Baby spinach is underrated too. If you mix that in with scrambled eggs, that's really, really good.
You can do a lot with eggs. They're a very versatile cooking ingredient. Obviously, Iowa Egg Council. Shout out to them for sponsoring the show and helping us just continue to keep this podcast alive. So, eat your eggs. Football.
Let's go.
Ladell Betts.
Tough one.
That hurts. That hurts.
Yeah.
Off to New York.
Ladell earned it. I think you have to be really impressed with what he's brought in. I do think we're going to hear some news here over the next week and a half, because I imagine KF wants to get it done before spring football begins.
Yeah, for sure.
I do think he's going to go a younger guy. I'm not sure if it's going to be an in-house hire or anything, but you have to have a guy, I think, with Southern recruiting ties, because I think as great as Ladell was in a lot of different areas, Ladell was an outstanding recruiter. He had an eye for talent. He had connections down the South. And people forget, if it wasn't Iowa that hired him, I think a lot of people would be upset, because if you look at his resume, like respectfully, he had no college coaching experience.
He jumped
a big
jump.
KF trusted him, got to Iowa, reinvented the room to some degree. Because again, Derek Foster landed a running back job with the Chargers. I believe he's with the Cowboys now. I might need to double check that. I think he's with the Cowboys now. But there's also some allure now from the Iowa running back job, right? The last 2 guys have gone off to the NFL within 3 or 4 years of getting the job.
Yeah.
So I think that's impressive. I think Southern recruiting ties, and I think you need a younger guy. You just need some younger energy in that room, and a guy that ultimately I think needs a mesh with Tim Lester. So I think if Tim Lester, I think he should have a significant say in who's going to be brought up in the system.
Yeah, I think meshing with Lester's system is huge. Meshing with Lester as a human is huge. I think he should have a ton of say in that. I do think that job is looked at as sought after, which is fun, because back in the Sean Green era, like we were that was a fun room to be a part of, whether you're a coach or a running back. And as our line starts to take more steps here, right? Like we took a massive step in 2024. Obviously, Caleb Johnson was a large part of that running game. I think we have talent in that running back room. The offensive line returns 3. We're going to have, a couple prospects that are maybe ready to step in and play significant minutes rather than like 22 when, shout out to Mason Richmond. If you haven't listened to that a couple podcasts ago, that one just dropped. He talks about the development of that line and that class, Ellsbury, DeYoung, Richmond, Connor Cole, all those guys, and how it was all of a sudden they found themselves at the front of the room and they're like, ooh, this is fast, right? And we saw that on the field. The product it lacked for a little bit of time there, but that line is coming along. Running backs are going to want to run behind a line that's got experience, and then hopefully we got people who want to come in and coach for that as well. I think you're right. We need somebody with great recruiting ties and ability to bring guys in. Having KJ and his numbers this past year, that doesn't hurt
Don't
as
hurt.
well. Like, hey, look what we could do with you, right?
Yeah.
Foster
Shout
is
out
with
Mason
the
too, man. Honestly, because like you talk about a guy that was like petrified of the media as a true freshman. Like, you know, he
dude,
even admitted like he was an arrogant kid walking into Iowa. And then he kind of got humbled.
sure,
And he's really opened up, and the way he's kind of just evolved as and a football player, like a human and a football player, and the way he's kind of learned to effectively communicate when talking about himself or like with the media, like that is a skill in itself. And I give him a lot of credit because he's never been a guy to shy away from accountability, especially over the last couple of years. He understands it. So again, I like to pay testament to guys that understand that, like the dynamic of all that. And
sure.
Mason's just like a true case of like you can see the development on the field, but you can see the character being developed off of it too. And I think that's a really cool thing.
Absolute pleasure to have on the show. I did a one-on-one with him. Kevin and Grant weren't able to make that recording, and I was like, man, this is going to test my interviewing skills. I got a lineman on here. I'm not sure how much he's going to want to talk. Dude, that conversation was awesome. He opened up.
Yeah.
He was vulnerable. Like it was amazing. Had a great conversation with him. So that was, if you haven't checked that out, go check it out. But yeah, that one hurts to lose. And I would imagine, like you said, we're recording this right before this will actually come out right before spring ball starts, right before March Madness starts. So
Yep.
they're going to want to fill that role because you want someone in there working during those important days of spring ball. Interesting to see who we get there. We did add somebody else to the football staff. I don't know shit about this guy, but there's a lot of people that get that
It's
excitement.
awesome. It's a hell of a hire.
Warren Ruggiero, football analyst, which is essentially like, hey, we don't have another coaching spot on the roster, but like you're gonna have a lot of say.
But remember, the NCAA, I believe, changed rules last year, 2 years ago, where like analysts can be on the field during like development periods now. So I think that's a really important point to not overlook. But dude, if you look at the guy's resume, like, no, Iowa's not going to run the slow mesh. Okay.
Can someone tell me what I don't know if I'm not an X's and O's guy. What the fuck is a slow mesh?
It puts a lot of pressure on the offensive line to hold their blocks longer. But like, I would highly encourage you. It's like slow developing
RPO
run pass options.
Okay.
But like it pays off in explosive plays because if you look at his offensive coordinator stats at Wake Forest and like the way he was able to turn around certain things, it's really impressive. To get this guy as an analyst role, I think it's a big deal. And on top of that, he's a proven quarterback developer. So you have another guy who can sit there and at least help or point in the right direction. Because again, football analyst isn't sexy. Like it's not a game-changing hire. So like I'm not sitting here trying to like blow smoke up everybody's asses, right? That's not my role. But I still think the more football savvy minds you have in the room, especially on the offensive side of the ball, because look, Iowa took a significant, massive step forward running the football. Offensive line play was outstanding. Yes, Caleb Johnson was great, but Kamari Moulton also had some really big flashes as well. Jazzy Patterson, like they have guys in that room that are capable of taking that next step. But what's the number one thing we want to see from Iowa's offense next year?
Got to be able to pass.
Got to be able to pass football, right? Now, it stinks that Mark Gronowski will not be able to go through spring, but he's going to be 100% healthy by summer. He's a proven guy that has run a similar system. He can go out there and do all the footwork, which, remember, if Cade McNamara, when he was here, he couldn't do that.
That's true.
Because depending on the injury, like you can't overstate that. He can still get the point of view of the offense from the actual spot rather than just watching film. So I think that's important to note as well. But now you have different receivers that can step up. You have more pass coordinator kind of minds in that room. And now you can throw in a couple different wrinkles. Like it's a good hire. Is it game changing? No. But does it add another guy who has proven to be able to flip an offense in a year or two? Absolutely. And that's exactly what Iowa needs.
Doesn't hurt. So that's exciting. That's fun. Also, just like, hey, if you're listening to this, don't sleep on the fact that we haven't, or maybe we just have crossed the barrier of Tim Lester being in the program for a year.
Yes.
He's been here for a year. Like he got hired, or was it April? Like was it?
It was early February. So they officially introduced him, I think February 8th, but like 13 months.
So like,
and he spent the first 2 months that you get first 2 months just learning guys' names.
Right. So we're
and like getting
we're
used to them as players.
we're still in an interesting, fun spot with Coach Tim Lester where things are they're probably feeling like things are rolling faster and faster every day, which is really, really good. And again, we're getting into that heat of the offseason where it's like, oh, it's just dead. We are going to have that spring ball bump, but there is work being done over there in the complex and a lot of exciting things happening, more playbook being installed, all of these things.
Yep.
Got a recruit a couple days ago. As of this recording, it'll be about a week or 2 weeks after this. Wide receiver from Wisconsin? Some guy?
Yeah, I'm pulling up this. I've been covering 3 or 4 different sports. I thought I would have all my stuff together. I like this pick. I mean, this is a guy who was, I think a lot of Iowa fans don't really know about him too much.
No.
But at the same time, like I'll tell you, based on our national analysts, they watched him play a couple months ago, and Tom Loy and a few of our guys said, like, this is going to be a rising guy. Like, he's going to rise through the ranks. He's going to be able to get more offers. So for Iowa to get a guy like that, especially at wide receiver, to commit to the team early, I think that's a nice little win. So yeah, Brody Schaefer, Iowa
6'3"?
pitched to him. He's he's about 6'1", 185. But the way Tyler Barnes kind of pitched it to him was he's an offensive Cooper DeJean. And I'm like, dude, do not put that pressure on that kid that early. But I'll tell you what,
My God.
It's commitment. He's a freak athlete. He's a really good athlete. He's got very steady hands, crisp route runner. I don't think he's a day one impact guy, but I also think he's going to be a guy that you're going to need to kind of recruit over the next year, because I'm not going to be surprised if he has a big football season next year and picks up another 8 to 10 offers. Like, I think he's that style of kid. So to kind of get him in the fold early, it's a nice win. And ultimately, Tyler, like if you look at Iowa's offense and over the last, 5 or 6 years, if you're getting a high 3-star wide receiver to commit to your team this early in the process, given where Iowa's passing game has been,
Right.
you're not going to complain about it.
No, not at all. Like, I think this is big. I think anytime you can get people to, it sounds bad, but like coming out of this little lull that we had in 22, 23, getting somebody to commit to this offense early and taking a chance and like, hey, we get an athlete. We get an athlete that maybe other people even want. Like that is good news. That helps. Helps the Hawks. We're about to head right into spring ball. A lot of things. Again, Gronowski is going to be out. There's a lot of new faces on the defense that are going to be getting some significant reps with the starters. What are you looking for? What are the things that you're tracking here as we head into the spring? Kind of the biggest keys for Iowa to work on, shore up, kind of make headway on in these 5 weeks, 15 practices this spring.
It seems like wild that we're talking about this, but I'm going to say Iowa's passing defense and the corners, because I just think there were too many lapses last season. We know Phil Parker. I can't even imagine what he was saying to his unit at times with all the frustration and returning experience. Like, it was just more lapses than we've seen Iowa have in recent memory. And they were still a good defense. They weren't great, but they were a good defense. Like, when you compare them to the national average and everything, I am worried about corner a little bit, just because you lose Jamari Harris and there really aren't a lot of proven guys at this point. But also at the same time, like, you need guys to step up. I will not be surprised if Iowa tries to get in the transfer portal late during that 10-day opening and land another cornerback. Obviously, losing all 3 starting linebackers are a big deal. I'm keeping a close eye on Cam Buffington. He's probably still a year away, but I'm telling you, I loved his film coming out of high school. I think he's an absolute freak athlete, played 4 different sports. I think his upside's very high. I like Iowa's defensive line. I think they did a good job of addressing that in the portal. I think Max Llewellyn is poised to just have a massive breakout season. I've been high on him since, again, high school and where he was getting recruited at. That was a nice little recruiting win for Iowa. And I'm going to say on the offensive side of the ball, you mentioned it earlier, there's guys that could step up, but are there guys immediately ready to take that step and uphold that new standard that has kind of been reestablished? There's going to be a lot of pressure on Trevor Lauk. Getting Logan Jones back, I think, is an underrated, underappreciated storyline. He's a first-team all-conference guy. I think he got way too criticized at times last year, because he's probably one of the more criticized first-team all-conference linemen I've seen in quite some time. Sure. I think he could have a big year. I think he made a smart business decision. I mean, I think the linebackers will be a little bit intriguing. I'm probably more so worried about corner right now.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of pressure on Xavier Wampa to really kind of live up to that hype that they had coming out of high school. I think he has all the potential in the world. I think this is the year he really focuses more on the X's and O's and angles rather than rely solely on his athleticism. And that's not a shot at him, but I think there are times, Tyler, where you watch, he got away with more things in high school because of his
Yeah.
athleticism. And when it translated to college, I think it's just taking a little bit to kind of learn that you can't rely on that athleticism because everybody's athletic in the Big Ten. You're going to go up against athletic guys. But he has all the potential to be a really, really good player. So those are probably some of the things I'm tracking. And I guess Hank Brown, quarterback, probably getting a lot of one reps. It's a completely new quarterback room. We know there's no Mark Gronowski, but again, a totally new quarterback room. And that's kind of mind-boggling when you think about that.
I can confirm everybody in the Big Ten is athletic. So X could have just come, Xavier could have just come and asked me.
Yep.
Yeah, I knew that about 10 years ago, actually. So that got demonstrated to me very quickly. But yeah, I think you're right. A lot of kids go through that, right? You're like, hey, I'm the big fish in the small pond. I can basically do whatever I want, and my athleticism and my natural ability will just get me there. Then you realize,
that's something I give Cooper DeJean a lot of credit for, because if you talk about the definition of a kid that really hadn't had his eyes opened yet,
true.
It's Cooper DeJean. And that's no shot at the football talent they have there, but like you think about the Big Ten versus Oval, Oval, Idaho, everything, like it's a crazy difference. But he came to Iowa, played sparingly as a freshman, and then immediately broke out as a sophomore. For small town Iowa, that's incredible. Oh, by the way, he left early to go to the NFL. And oh, by the way, he had a pick six against arguably a top 2 quarterback that's ever played the game.
In the Super Bowl.
The
best. The theme of the best being the best wherever they go, whatever level they're at, is that reigns supreme. And I think that's just what you see with Cooper. Is he's just better than you. Like he was that guy. He's always that guy. He's gonna be that guy. And not
Cooper
many of us
is not a safety, dude. Have you heard that song, dude? TikTok song?
He's just a corner that'll lock down your number one. So yeah, good. He's amazing. How Philly accepted him and like has adopted him, and he's now like a stud, like he's a superstar there. It's amazing. So
I do think it's funny, and this is the only thing I'll say about this, but like of all cities, Philly has 2 dominant white like corners. It's just
yeah.
Who would have thought?
I know.
I remember there was a mock draft when Cooper, it was before Cooper's junior year, but they had him going the Broncos. And I'm like, oh my God, can you imagine Riley Moss and Cooper DeJean?
Oh,
like the same state that played at the same college being like the 2 starting white corners in the league. Like the odds of that happening would have just been insane to have happen.
Huge shout out to Riley and Cooper for really putting on for Iowa. They're just absolute studs. Going back to the linebacker thing, we had Nick and Jay both on the show. Awesome to get them on and do interviews with them. And both of them said the same thing. Jaden Harrell, and Carson Shire are those 2 are dudes, and there seems to be no worry about them stepping in, and that just kind of
crazy though, right? Like
I know
you don't want
to
put that pressure on them, because if you look at the Iowa linebacker tradition, you're like, look, I'm not saying they can't be those guys, but the standard's ridiculous.
It's
high. You think about it. And that's the ultimate praise I can throw to Seth Wallace and the Iowa linebackers, because you lose Jack Campbell, 17th overall pick, and goes top 20 in the draft, plays great for one of the best teams in the NFL. Then you have Jay Higgins, who'd been waiting quietly in the shadows, be a 2-time All-American, probably should have been a 2-time Butkus Award winner, but that's a conversation for another day. The standard's insane right now for Iowa.
Had Josie Jewell before that, Morris before that,
Greenway.
Just go. I mean, dude, the linebacker.
Anger.
It's insane.
Abdul Haj on Iowa's coaching staff.
Yeah, it's so. I think you're right. I think the secondary is where the eyes are going to be, and it's going to be interesting. Again, I trust Phil Parker, and I trust they know what they need in those spots. They're going to find a way to get the people there. that's about all I got. It's going to be fun you don't really get to watch a lot of spring ball. There is that one open practice that Iowa is
I'm
choosing
very
to
happy
do.
they kept it. I'm quite frankly, Tyler, a little bit surprised that Iowa kept it.
I
Just
am
because
too.
you look at the trend around the country is they're shutting down because they don't want guys to, have schools watch their games or whatever. And I think that's a little bit over dramatic, but I've also heard enough crazy stories behind the scenes, and I know the way the game's trending right now. I don't blame them. And what does Kurt Ferentz like to do almost more than anything else? Keep things in house. He
Yeah,
wants his
you're
locker
right.
room, his building. He wants everything to stay there. So I think especially there's even more pressure from a fan base like Iowa or other schools. If you're asking for people to throw in money for NIL to pay players and you aren't giving them any spring football access, if I was the donor, I'd be a little bit teed, but
Yeah.
that's just me. Maybe I'm petty. Maybe I'm dramatic. You know me well enough, maybe so. But I know there'd be a lot of people that probably have the same belief because you also have some people that were donating to NIL that were angry when Mark Gronowski had to get surgery.
True.
I think those are two totally different equations and situations. But, you kind of have to be more transparent if you're going to continue to ask for money. And that's not an Iowa thing, mind you. That's an NIL and
it's
the
in
culture
everything.
of college
Yeah.
football. That is not an Iowa only problem.
And as with most conversations, we've wrapped our way to the number one thing in college sports now, and it's the money. And that's how we finish the podcast. It's all comes back to the money. I'm still looking for my NIL. I'm gonna get some. That big court settlement actually is going. It's supposed to go through at like April 7th. So
Are you getting a little payday off that?
might get a little residual check off that. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
I'm curious. Do you know is that taxable?
I don't know.
I mean, I don't know
The
how
way
much you're getting or like what. I have not paid attention to it. I've been too busy, but like,
it's a
I'd be
decent
very
little
curious
chunk.
if that was taxable.
So from what I've heard is like damages off of a lawsuit. This is like there's going to be some lawyer or some people that know way
Yes,
more
of
than me.
course.
I looked it up on Google and like the AI response was like, if you receive a settlement and the settlement is for damages incurred, damages are not taxed. And what
Okay.
as ridiculous as it may sound, I believe what we would be getting paid for is classified under damages. I do,
Okay.
and to be, if anybody is listening, I do feel pretty damaged about not receiving my NIL that I was entitled to as a long snapper who no one knew. So, I don't know if it's taxed or not. Even if it is, it's decent. It's a
Honestly, you
decent
probably
little.
could have made a nice little chunk of change or a nice little clothing line about you falling short of the end zone. Because I
Oh
do think
yeah,
that's such an iconic play. You probably could have made some money off that.
yeah. The tough part is like that was 5 games before my career ended, so it's not like I had a long runway to like milk that. But
It's a play. I mean, based on the result of the game, it's one that would still be talked about forever, though.
yeah, you're right. Who knows? There's definitely some damages there. Hopefully, we collect the check. Who knows? April 7th. I'll be talking about it on this podcast more and more. David Eickholt joins the show. Hopefully, this one pops off like the last one. I mean, that video, David, in just a couple weeks, shot to the number one most watched video as a guest all time on our YouTube channel.
That's
Which
ridiculous. I
we've
am
only
not
been
entertaining.
nothing against you, but like we've had. Well, I'm just saying we've had Greenway, Spencer Lee
Yeah.
had the top spot. Coach Wallace was up there. We had Document on. That one did really well. Dude, it shot above all of those. Like I was like, God, I don't know if it was just it hit the algorithm right or what happened, but we appreciate you coming on.
Much of me, if anything.
I don't think so. I enjoy having you on. Hopefully everybody else did. We'll have you back in a little bit, maybe after spring ball. We'll do a little wrap up episode and see if
We'll do
how
about this? We'll make a little deal. Maybe a little soft agreement here. Why don't we do it after the open practice? Because Sean Bach will probably film every play and then he'll upload it. So even if you aren't able to go, you'll be able to go to our YouTube page and HawkeyeInsider.com. You can watch
absolutely. Shout out to him. HawkeyeInsider.com, where you can get all the inside info on your Iowa Hawkeyes. Thanks again for everybody listening. We'll be back. When's this come out? I don't know. We'll be back in a couple days with another episode. Until then, peace.